Hello everyone from Math 1340, Statistics. It's Professor Wenson here again, going through a video here on section 1.4, Experimental Design and Ethics. Really we're only going to be talking about the experimental design part of the title of this section, and not the ethics part so much. Okay, so here I am on our Canvas page. Now this is for Math 1340 R1602. As I've mentioned before, if you're in any section of my Math 1340 classes, you'll see the same stuff. Alright, so you should be seeing under Week 1, the Week 1 module, you should be seeing a page for section 1.4. And once you open this page, right, every page has the same three highlighted areas. Read. Read section 1.4 of your OpenStax book, and I've got a link to that here that you can click on, and it opens up the openstax.org page with section 1.4 on it. And read, again, just like any textbook, read through it. I'm going to leave this to you, and pay attention to bolded words and definitions. Some key ones here will be explanatory variable and response variable, which are like the independent and dependent variables of an experiment. And we'll get to that later. And then you'll see in here too that, what an experiment is. You can read some examples. And again, when you're reading the examples, I'd recommend trying to do them on your own. Try to figure out how to work the example before you click on show solution. See how you're doing on your own. And then, like I said, you can read the ethics part if you wish. I wouldn't say don't do it. I'll just say it's optional though. Not going to really be doing the ethics stuff part of this, even though ethics is very important. Right? Whether or not an experiment is ethical or not is a very important topic. Just not one I'm going to cover here in an introductory statistics course. Okay. Then after reading, you have do the KnewtonAlta homework, which I'll get to in a minute. And below that you have watch, just some videos related to that. Now this particular section, there are only 2 objectives in the KnewtonAlta homework. So I have objective listed here, and then a video related to that. And again, you just click on the link and it'll open up the YouTube, and you can watch it, take notes, whatever. You can try playing them. Now some of them work, like this one, but a lot of them don't. Maybe it's the way I put them in there, I don't know, but the links work. So click on the link, open it up in YouTube, or you can try watching it in the Canvas page itself. But you have objectives and videos related to those objectives. Alright, so hopefully after you've read the material, watch some videos if you need to, you can go into the homework. Right, click on this and it'll take you to the assignment, section 1.4, experimental design and ethics. You should see something that has you launch it in a new tab, or it might even just open up in Canvas. And again, I'm in a teacher mode here, so let me show you what it looks like as a student. Alright, so you see the title, the mastery bar. There are 2 objectives, as I mentioned. Right, you can click on the little down arrow here. You can see the 2 objectives and your progress on those objectives. Alright, so this first question is on the objective, determine whether a study is observational or an experiment and appropriate use cases. Alright, so it's the first time I'm seeing this objective. Now, like I said before in other videos, if you've read the material and you watch the videos that I put up in Canvas for you from YouTube, and you feel comfortable, right, you feel like you know the material reasonably well, you can try answering questions right now. But if it's an objective that looks unfamiliar to you, like the wording sounds weird, or if you're struggling with a problem, I'd recommend clicking on more instruction, especially if it's an objective you're seeing for the first time. So more instruction, view instruction. Alright, so this is on you have observational studies versus experimental studies. Alright, so there's some reading here. I'll read this to you. So there are two primary ways to collect data from a new sample: an observational study and an experimental study. Both of these methods involve choosing a sample of individuals from the population and recording the value of one or more variables for each individual. However, there are some differences. In an observational study, no attempt is made to control any aspect of the individuals in the sample. So nothing is done to the individuals in the sample. Right? Nothing is done to control anything, any individuals in the sample. The sample is chosen using an appropriate process, right? We saw sampling in a previous section. And the variables of interest are recorded for each individual. That's it. You pull your sample, record your data, just observe. Nothing else is done to the individuals. So this kind of study is typically used when it is difficult, unethical, or impossible to control factors in the sample. An observational study is also commonly used when there are no factors that would need to be controlled. So here are a few examples where an observational study would be used. 1. A study on the relationship between smoking and the risk of lung cancer. Alright, so you pull a sample from your population and you just simply record, do you smoke or not? And then maybe keep tabs on them and see if they, over the years and see who, if they, and keep asking and just keep recording, if they're smoking or not and whether or not they develop lung cancer. That's simply observational, just recording data. 2. A study on the relationship between premature birth and early reading skills. Okay, so again, you could take a sample of children, people that were, and see, were they born prematurely or not, and then keep tabs on these children, the ones that were born prematurely, the ones that weren't, and however you define that, and then keep tabs of their, reading skills. And again, it's just keeping tabs. It's just recording data. Nothing's done to control any aspect of the individual. A survey on the opinions of residents on a proposed addition to a local school. Again, just a survey of opinions. You're just recording opinions. All right, so these are just 3 examples out of many. All right. But observational studies are just simply, you take your sample and you simply record data. In an experimental study, the researchers attempt to control one or more aspects of the individuals in the sample. The individuals in the sample will be randomly divided into multiple groups or cases. Then these controlled factors will be set for each of the groups as chosen by the researchers. This may be more clear with a few examples. All right, so some examples of this. So, experimental studies. Researchers randomly assign individuals into 3 groups. One group listens to no music. One group listens to a top 40 channel from a streaming service. And one group listens to individually selected music. The researchers then give the subjects a cognitive test. So in this experiment here, what's being controlled is the amount of music or the type of music that's listened to by these individuals. The researchers break them up into groups and then say, hey, you group of people, don't listen to music. And then you, the second group of people, you listen to this top 40 channel. And then this third group, you listen to whatever you want. All right? So they're controlling what kinds of music or how much music these people, these individuals are listening to. All right? So that aspect of control is what makes this an experimental study. An agricultural agency divides 100 plots into 2 groups. One group receives no pesticides, and the other group receives pesticide treatments. The crop yields of each plot are measured at the end of the season. Okay, so yes, data is being recorded, sure, right? How much crop is yielded by these plots. But there is a control here. What's being controlled is the amount of pesticides, right? This one field, this one group is given no pesticides by the researchers, the agency. And then this other group of plots is given some pesticide treatment. So it's kind of like the amount of music in the previous example. There's some aspect of these plots is being controlled, which makes it an experiment as opposed to an observational study. All right, and here are the definitions of those again. So now some questions. Right. Now this is just an example of a question with a solution. Right. So question, a large manufacturing firm is interested in the effect of the temperature of the manufacturing floor on worker productivity. Over the course of a year, the firm randomly samples its 103 sites and records the temperature and the quantity of items produced on that day. Is this an experiment or an observational study? This should be observational, because all they did was take a sample and record. Right? They took a sample of these 103 sites and recorded the temperatures and quantity of items, and that's it. They didn't break them into groups. They didn't try to control any aspect of the individuals, of the sites. So they see here the research is an observational study, right? Because the firm did not control any aspects of the sample units. All right. So now that I've read through the instruction, and hopefully understand, and hopefully I've explained well what the difference between an experimental study and an observational study is. Now I get into the questions. Just continue, and you still have the instruction about to go back to if you wish. So a biology student is interested in the relationship between temperature and germination time for soybeans. Okay. The student gets sample seeds from multiple sources and randomly selects 180 seeds from them. So there's the sample. He's sampling. Then he sets up 3 growing stations, one at 20 degrees Celsius, one at 15 degrees, and one at 25 degrees. He divides the seeds into groups. Remember, you probably noticed that earlier in the examples of an experimental study where the sample was divided into groups of 60, 3 groups of 60, and he plants the seeds from each group in a growing station. He then records the germination time for each seed. So sure, he's recording data, but what's being controlled here is the temperature. Right? He's breaking this sample up into 3 groups, and this first group is at 20 degrees. This second group is at 15 degrees. This third group is at 25. So the student here is controlling the temperature that these seeds are planted in. So there's definitely a control here. This is definitely an experiment. Now, which of these is correct? The study is an experiment. The controlled factor is germination time. No. That's something he's recording. What is he control? I mentioned it already. He's controlling the temperatures, right? Separating the groups into 3 different temperatures, and that's this third option here. Okay. All right, and then again, read the answer explanations. Make sure you really truly understand what's going on. Don't just guess things. All right, then I continue on. It looks like, see, I made some progress in this objective. Still the same objective. A scientist is interested in finding out the effect of soil quality on crop quality. Would an experimental or observational study design be more appropriate? Okay, so this is, you're going to think about this a little bit. It's kind of like, the last problem where the student wanted to see the effect of temperature on germination time for those soybeans. Well, if you want to, if you wanted to do an observational study there, you'd have to wait for certain times of the year and, or go around and find certain fields that were at certain temperatures and then record germination times. It'd be a lot easier to control the temperature yourself. I believe that this would be the same. if you wanted to do an observational study here, you'd have to go around until you found enough fields with different soil qualities and then record the crop qualities on those fields. Well, I think an easier thing to do would be to do an experiment where you take a plot of land or take some little growing stations and put different levels of soil quality, like put some poor soil in one, some decent soil in the next one, some excellent soil in the third one, or however many groups, however many plots you want to make. Grow some crops and and record the quality of those crops at a late when they grow. So I feel that an experimental study should be used with the soil quality, right, as the control factor. You'd be recording crop quality. You're not controlling that, just like the temperatures and the germination times in the earlier problem. The control factor should be soil quality. All right, so I'm going to say an experimental study should be used with the soil quality as the controlled factor. And I hope that made sense the way I explained that. All right. So another question related to the same objective. A researcher wants to evaluate the effect of using Facebook on happiness. And again, notice that there's a lot of cause and effect relationships here. What's the effect? How does using Facebook affect happiness? So, and usually that the thing that's being affected is what's being recorded, and the thing that could be controlled is the initial variable, the use of Facebook. And those are actually going to be called later during the other objectives. The explanatory variable is the first variable, and then the second variable, the one that you're affecting, will be the response variable, but we'll get to that in a little bit. Would an experimental study or observational study design be more appropriate? Okay. So again, you could control the use of Facebook. As I'm seeing down here, an observational study should be used because it's not possible to control the use of Facebook. That's not true. I mean, you could do an observational study where you go around and you actually go out and find certain people that barely use it, people that use it a lot, people that use it minimally, and then record happiness levels, whatever those are. But again, I think this would be possibly easier to do an experiment on because you can control how much Facebook is used. Right? You break your sample up into several groups and have each of the several groups use Facebook at different levels, from not at all to several hours a day or something, and then over time record their happiness levels, however you decide to rate happiness levels. All right, so again, I'm going to say an experimental study should be used with the use of Facebook as its control factor. All right, because again, it can be controlled pretty easily, and it would be, again, you could do an observational study, but like I said before, you'd have to go out and find all sorts of different people that used Facebook at different levels, and that would be pretty difficult to do. It would be a lot easier to just control what groups use Facebook for so long. All right. Looks like I might have just one more question on this objective. So, in a study to add a new feature to a software program, the programmer introduces two categories, men and women, in the survey she conducted. Is the study observational or experimental? If it is an experiment, what is the controlled factor? All right. So the programmer here it says in a study to add a new, I'm trying to get my head around this. Study to add a new feature to a software program. Like maybe should they add the new feature or not? I'm guessing that's what that means. The programmer of this software program introduces two categories, men and women, in the survey she conducted. Is the study observational or experimental? All right. So my feeling at first glance is because of this introduction of two categories, the programmer breaks it up into men and women, and then records the results for men, records the results for women in this survey, and probably compares them, and to see if this new feature should be added to the software program. So I'm feeling because again the programmer here did something, introduced two categories. In an observational study, you don't do anything. You just sample and then record. In an experimental study, you introduce something, you control something, and that introduction of the categories with men and women I would say causes this to be an experiment. All right, but then again, it's just a survey. Because it is just a survey, though. I mean, you can break it up into categories, but really all she's doing, this programmer, is recording value from a survey. So yes, there are categories in here. Okay, so maybe she introduced the two new categories, but it's just a survey. And usually surveys are given out. People record stuff, and then you collect the survey. So nothing. All right. So all right. I'm gonna flip my thinking. I apologize. I'm going to say that this was more of an observational study then, because it's a survey. I think the key word here is survey. And there weren't groups. I know there's categories and all that. All right, so let's see what that happens here. All right. Okay, woohoo. All right, so they caught the word survey, and the programmer didn't break things up into groups and control anything, right? Didn't control how much of this, how much of that was done to the men and to the women. Just broke it up into two categories and said, here, take this survey and I'll collect them. So just observational, just recording. Let's see what they say. The samples are chosen using an appropriate process. However, no attempt is made to control any aspect of the sample, even though the variables of interest are recorded for each group. Yeah, so there are the groups men and women, sure, but nothing was changed. Like the men and women have equal, nothing was changed for the men or changed for the women. That's what makes this simply observational. I hope that's clear. I hope that makes sense. Okay, now moving on. There's only one more objective here. So this is, I mentioned these words before. I'm going to go to the more instruction. That's identify explanatory variables and response variables in an experiment. So these are really kind of like the independent and dependent variables of an experiment. When I change this an explanatory variable, like the amount of Facebook that's used, the response variable is like the dependent variable. How does a change in the independent variable affect the dependent variable, the happiness? Remember that problem from earlier. If I change the amount of Facebooks that's used, the amount of Facebook used could be the explanatory variable, would be, and then the happiness levels would be the response variable. All right, so again, independent, dependent, but we'll see that in more instruction. All right, so explanatory and response variables. So they start with a question here, right? Does aspirin reduce the risk of heart attacks? So you see the cause and effect here. The amount of aspirin being used would be an explanatory variable, the independent variable. If I change that amount, the chance of a heart attack occurring, does the person have a heart attack or not, that would be the response variable, the dependent variable. Is one brand of fertilizer more effective at growing roses than another? Questions like these are answered with studies using randomized experiments, right, where the things are controlled, right, experiments. The purpose of an experiment is to investigate the relationship between two variables. An explanatory variable attempts to explain, right, explanatory, explain attempts to explain or influence changes in another variable. Different values of the explanatory variable are called treatments. The variable that's affected, like I said earlier, when I change the amount of aspirin, what's the percentage risk of a heart attack? Does that change? The variable that's affected, the variable that is changed by altering the explanatory variable, is called the response variable. And like I said earlier, you could think of explanatory as independent. You choose to change that however you wish, and then what happens to the response variable? The value of the response variable depends upon the value of the explanatory variable. So you could think of explanatory as independent, response as dependent. In a randomized experiment, the researcher manipulates values of the explanatory variable and measures any resulting changes in the response variable. Independent, dependent, like I said. So an example here. So say you want to know if there is a relationship between the amount of time a student spends studying for an exam and that student's grade on the exam. So the explanatory variable, or the independent variable here, would be the amount of time the student studies. If that can be changed, and then the thing that is affected when you change studying time is the grade. So the student's grade would be the response variable, or the dependent variable. And they write that here, right? The explanatory variable is the amount of time the student spends studying for the exam. The response variable would be the student's grade. It's cause and effect. When I change this, how does it affect this? So when you alter the time the student studies, right, the explanatory or independent variable, this change will affect change in the student's grade, or the dependent variable, the response variable. You can imagine that as the amount of time spent studying increases, that positively affects the student's grade. Generally, you would think that, right? And then these key terms I've mentioned here, right? You can think of the explanatory variable as the independent variable, or input variable, or predictor variable. Lots of words for the same thing. Different values of the explanatory variable are treatments. That was mentioned earlier. I mentioned the response variable could be thought of as the dependent variable, or outcome or output variable. Now, these things here, I'll read them off, but I don't know if there's too many questions, or if at all, on them. These are also in the OpenStack section. A lurking variable is some additional variable that can cloud a study's outcome. So in some cases, the lurking variable may be referred to as a confounding variable, or a confounding factor, or a confounder. Like, it's something that the experimenter may not have taken into account that might also have an effect on the response variable. So like this problem up here, the amount of time a student spends studying was the explanatory variable. The response variable was the student's grade. A lurking variable there could be amount of sleep, right? Because another thing that could have an effect on the student's grade could be the amount of sleep that students gets before the night of an exam, or the amount of nourishment they have, how full they are, how much energy they have. There could be some outside factors, these lurking variables, that might also have an effect on the response variable. Right? But the particular study wanted to study the time studying. Control group. The group set aside to receive the placebo treatment. Now, what is a placebo treatment? The treatment that cannot influence the response variable. All right, so you've probably heard of placebo before. When they're testing a drug, break people off into groups. One group will receive a placebo, like a sugar pill that does nothing, but they think they're getting it. They're getting the actual treatment. Then the other group gets the actual treatment, and then they compare results later. Right, and then maybe a third group will get nothing, and and they'll all have the same risk of heart attack in the beginning of the study, and then they check it again later. The group set aside to receive the placebo treatment, something that doesn't affect the response variable whatsoever, is a control group. Blinding. is preventing either the subjects or the researchers from knowing whether they are assigned to the control group or the treatment group, usually by using a placebo in experiments involving humans. That's what I mentioned earlier, the sugar pill that's used as a placebo very often. You know, the people taking the pill don't know that they're taking a sugar pill. You know, they think they're taking the actual testing, the drug that's being tested. So they'd be considered blind participants. You know, they don't know that they're actually not receiving the true thing. And perhaps even the researchers, you know, who are maybe the person running the experiment will assign a person to give the pills that also doesn't know what pills they're giving. Right, so that could be a double-blind experiment where both the subjects and the researchers are blinded. Right. But again, I think the key things here are for this objective we're on explanatory variables and response variables. Okay. All right, so some questions now. Researchers are investigating whether taking aspirin regularly reduces the risk of heart attacks. So, like the amount of aspirin, how often you take aspirin, and then your risk of heart attacks. The how often you take aspirin would be like the explanatory variable. And then the risk of heart attack, or whether or not a person had a heart attack, would be the response variable. Right? Again, it's cause and effect. 400 men participate in the study. The men are divided randomly into two groups. One group takes aspirin pills, and the other group takes placebo pills, right? A pill with no aspirin in it. The men each take one pill a day, and they don't know which group they are in. At the end of the study, researchers will count the number of men in each group who have had heart attacks and identify the explanatory, and I mentioned it already, the explanatory and response variables, the independent and dependent variables, do they take, are they taking aspirin regularly, right? So the explanatory variable would have to do with the aspirin, right? So the type of pill the men took each day. Now it's not the heart attack. That's the response variable. Whether or not they had what's the effect? Did they have a heart attack or not? Is the response variable the dependent variable? So it's either this one or, well, can't be this one then. So it's this one, right? Because the response variables. So the type of pill the men took each day. Were they taking aspirin regularly? Explanatory variable. And did they have a heart attack or not? The response variable, independent, dependent. Here they are again. Okay. Lurking variables and the importance of blinding. Okay. So I already mentioned lurking variables and blinding. Power of suggestion. Okay, you can read all that on your own. I'm not going to go through that. Alright, so the Smell and Taste Treatment and Research Foundation conducted a study to investigate whether smell affects learning. Alright, so smell, whatever they're measuring for smell, is the explanatory variable, and however they're measuring learning outcomes is the response variable. The subjects completed a maze on paper while wearing floral scented masks, and a different maze while wearing unscented masks. So I guess what kind of mask they were wearing is the explanatory variable, right, for the smell. And then I guess whether or not they could complete the maze would be the response variable. Did they learn? Could they learn? The order of the masks is randomly assigned to the subjects. All subjects were tested in the same location. Right. Researchers found that it took longer to complete the maze while wearing the floral scented mask as compared to the unscented mask. Is the location of subjects' home a lurking variable in the study? Is the location of subjects' home a lurking variable? So where these people live would that have any effect on whether or not they can complete this maze with a floral mask on or a non-floral mask on? I would say no. But then again, people might live by some chemical plant, and their sense of smell is affected, and that had something to do with whether or not the mask affected their ability to do the maze. But honestly, I feel because they were tested in the same location, they were given the same kind of the maze, and some had masks with sense, some had masks without sense. They just were. I don't think where the subjects lived. I don't think where they lived had anything to do with their ability to do that maze. All right, so I'm going to say no here. All right, had nothing to do with it. Okay. Now, there might be some lurking variables, right? There might be some other things that explain why they couldn't complete the maze. Something about maybe I know IQ is kind of a weird number, but like maybe IQ or level of education or income. I don't know. I doubt. I don't think income would have anything to do with ability to do a maze. But there might be some lurking variables here. Just where the person's living isn't one of them. All right. All right. So let's continue on here. Now we're going back. Now we're out of the instruction, close to done with the section here. Almost. Looks like 2 more questions. True or false? An explanatory variable is a value or component of the independent variable applied in an experiment. Well, I mentioned earlier you can relate, explanatory variable to independent variable, but I'm going to say false here because, it's not a value of the independent variable. The explanatory variable is the independent variable. Remember, a value of the independent variable or a value of the explanatory variable was called a treatment. Right, so pay attention to your definitions. Hopefully you're writing those down, taking notes also. When you read, anytime you do any reading for schoolwork, you should be taking notes. Remember the treatment. All right, and then one more here probably. Again, I might have one more. It might be more. And again, if you get it wrong, remember it just gives you more problems. So try not to guess. Which of the following best describes the term explanatory variable? Well, not the dependent variable. Remember, that's the response variable. A value or component of the we just said that was wrong on the last problem. A variable that has an effect on a study even though it is neither an independent nor dependent variable. That was a lurking variable. That was one of those outside variables that might have an effect but weren't actually considered in the study. And I mentioned, right, the explanatory variable is the independent variable in an experiment. Wonderful. And I think that's it. Yes, okay. So, again, please read through the OpenStax, section 1.4. Watch the videos I have up in Canvas on the section 1.4 page if you need to. Take notes, of course. You should always be taking notes and organizing those notes so you can read them and study them later. When you're in the KnewtonAlta assignment, when you see a new objective or you're struggling on a problem, click on more instruction and read through that, take notes on that, or watch videos. They might pop you've seen in previous sections, they threw videos at you. And do the best you can to try to get through these assignments. Now, if you've done all that and you're still struggling, right, maybe take a screenshot of the problem you're struggling with, or the type of problem you're struggling with, and send it to me, or go to a tutor. Send me a question, and I'll get back to you as soon as I possibly can. If it's within 8 a.m. and 4 p.m. Monday through Friday, I'll get back to you pretty quickly. And just be careful because, remember I've said this every video on these sections in KnewtonAlta. The order that I'm seeing problems in, or the kinds of exactly the same numbers or type wording. You're not, everybody, they have a lot of problems in KnewtonAlta, so the problems I'm seeing are not exactly the same as the problems you're going to be seeing, or a friend of yours in the class. So just be aware of that. But the material's the same, right? The thinking's the same, right? That's not changing. The instruction's not changing. The material's not changing. Right? All right. So again, I hope this was informative, and just enjoy working through section 1.4. And thanks for watching.